This Jets thing, it felt, I don't know why it did. Like it was just going to happen when free agency. And then when he
Right.
went on McAfee, it would all just kind of come to fruition. And that clearly is not the case. Now, nothing is actually happening right now, right? There's no
Right.
practice, there's no OTAs, nothing really
Yeah.
happens till after the draft. And really, that feels like the timeline, right? Day one of the draft. Because if they want that 13th pick, and if the Jets are hesitant, because both of them feel like they're in a little bit of a staring contest, if you're the Jets, I'm not going to give you that 13th pick till the last hour when, in my opinion, I would capitulate and give you the 13th pick. But that'd probably be it. I'll give you pick
Yeah.
13, maybe something conditional next year, but that's it. And maybe they're trying to give some package of like a 2 and a 2 next year or something. But that's where it feels like we might have another 30 days of this before the draft where it's just kind of sitting here looking at each other. Is that what it
Well,
feels
I
like to you?
mean, and I also think, Green Bay has got their quarterback at practice ready to go. They can stall all they want. They don't need a quarterback. He's in the building. So their takeaway is we want 2 firsts. We're going to get a tight end and a receiver, 2 big needs. They could go, the rest of the draft after that could mostly be defense. They're going to be stubborn. And it's like I've been in enough contract negotiations in my career, probably 12, where sometimes I've had a little leverage, sometimes I haven't. But it usually wraps up pretty quickly because we both want it done. I do think, and maybe it's only 10, 15% of it, I think Green Bay is going to say, you have been screwing around with us for 3 years. So welcome to your party. And so I think a little bit of this, because Green Bay, come on, you say what you want. I would give up a first for Aaron Rodgers. I wouldn't give up much after that, maybe a conditional third. They can't be that far apart, John. They can't. Nobody thinks he's worth 2 ones at this point because nobody knows if he's going to play for 2 years.
He just said 90% chance he was going to retire 3 weeks ago. So
That's right.
Honestly, that kind of hurts the Packers in the sense that this whole situation is just kind of a sad ending to a weird situation these last couple of years because he had so much individual success winning those MVPs. And those 2 flameouts are just, they're pretty historic losses, both at home. The Niners game, the Niners didn't score an offensive touchdown. And that Tampa game loss, those are it's just been a bizarre way to end a career that, had so much problem and had high highs, but they were mainly in the regular season.
Well, also, not everybody, you were in the scouting game. You obviously were good at it. You loved it. Some guys are lifers. You looked at it and thought, probably it's hard to make money here. I don't like the travel. I'm guessing.
I didn't like it. I am more addicted, and so I think I've had more success doing this. What I've been part of as a podcaster, it comes more naturally to me. I can control more. That I saw the addiction in Howie Roseman and Andy Reid and Brett Veach, and I went, I don't know if I love it as much as those guys do. And if I'm going to be in the industry and want to go, I'm going to get capped. And it's hard to do that job if you're not an addict. It really is. It's why Tom, Andy, Belichick, Saban, the best are Mark Few, Mick Cronin. These guys are addicted to the game.
Listen,
Addicted.
when I got out of college, John, I was very fortunate. I got a AAA baseball play-by-play job. So I did sales and an inning of play-by-play, which became 2 innings, and I traveled a little bit. But I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then about year 3, I worked with, like Ken Korak is the voice of the A's.
Yeah.
And it has been forever.
I know Ken. Yeah, great guy.
Yeah. And there were guys like that in the league and guys, you started meeting these guys and you're like, they loved baseball.
John Miller.
John Miller loved baseball. And I liked baseball, but I liked football. And so, and this circles back to Aaron Rodgers. I think he really likes football, but he's not, I don't think he's addicted to it. And so what's happening is all the great young quarterbacks are addicted. They're ascending and they love it. And he likes it. And you see his off-season workouts last year. I just didn't think he played particularly well. So, it's like in my whole career, I've seen guys, I'm pretty addicted to this job. It's hard to stay at the top of anything. You can do it on some natural talent, but as you age, if you're not addicted, like Aaron, you start eroding really fast. Like I thought Cam liked football. He eroded really fast. Big Ben His off seasons were legendarily soft, right? Beers and, as Jay Glazer said, beers and camping with the kids, right? So I think you age really fast in athletics if you're not addicted to it. LeBron's addicted to it. He's aging gracefully.
And that's why when you look at the young quarterbacks, like the Mahomes, Josh Allen contract situations, boom, handled. Trevor Lawrence, that thing will be handled quick. Herbert will get Joe Burrow. It'll just be smooth. And this Lamar situation, last week, my theory is this. These GMs on these teams are getting calls from someone they don't know and they don't trust. They do behind-the-scene deals all the time with the Rosenhauses and the Tom Condons, but there's a level of trust. They've been working for decades. You're calling me, asking about trades. I don't know you. I'm not going to lose my team's second-round draft pick over tampering or something. And this situation has jumped the shark now. And part of it is on Lamar. And I'm not super pro-agent, not anti. If Richard Sherman with the Niners handled his contract himself, and it was fine. But in this situation, they got a problem on their hand. Lamar's camp. Like, they need to kind of rein this in. If they want to get out of there, if they want this money, you can't operate trying to get $150, $200 million with this level of direction because it's not going well.
Well, when I watched the Air movie with Michael Jordan, one of the things Michael and his mom are really good at is making these big decisions. David Falk, Phil Knight, Sonny Vaccaro, Dean Smith. Michael's mom and Michael were really good big decision makers. LeBron, by and large, chose Pat Riley and D. Wade and Eric Spoelstra. Then the Lakers brand has enormously helped his business. But some athletes are gifted. I'll give you Carmelo Anthony. So when Carmelo was with the Denver Nuggets, he demanded a trade to the Knicks. It actually screwed him. He made it so public that the Knicks were trapped, had to give up a ton to get him. He gets to New York, they don't have anything, right? He's the $10 million chandelier in the empty mansion. And so Carmelo didn't surround himself with good people that should have said, shh, don't do this. So Lamar's kind of the classic. He doesn't have the right people around him to give him guidance. By the way, most people don't. I didn't at 24. Yeah. Like I get it. Michael was so great. The league made sure probably you get the right people, right? Yeah, there's a lot of greatness there. Or LeBron James, like the NBA made sure, let's steer you to the right people, right? But I feel like Lamar, all of us need guidance, especially at 24, 25. I just don't think he has the right people around him.
Well, I saw Richard Sherman said on his podcast on The Volume, check that one out, to Calvin Johnson about these guaranteed contracts. And for most players, because the guaranteed number kind of hovers between, let's just say 40 to 60 million, but these quarterbacks, even low ones, are 120, 140, 150. You basically play out your entire contract always because the way it works on the cap, they can never cut you. It took Matt Ryan until he's like 38 years old to finally get cut. Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, they have played their entire time on that contract that we said was terrible like 4 years ago. So if you just sign the $220 million contract with 145 guaranteed, the likelihood you're going to see 90% of that is really, really high. Just Derek Carr played out his entire contract on the Raiders until they kind of messed with it last year to kind of do an extension. And then boom, he gets another $80 million. I mean, as a quarterback, you are in the driver's seat. So they're arguing, it feels like, over kind of nominal stuff in the big picture of what he's ultimately going to make.
Yeah. And again, if he had like a really good team of managers around him, he'd get it. You can't ask athletes to be great athletes and like financial wizards. I mean, look at, I've negotiated 12 contracts or been part of 12 negotiations. I have great people around me. I would get taken to the cleaners. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a litigator. So it's like, I just feel like, and also, I've said this before. I said it last week. Kawhi Leonard and Lamar have this sort of unorthodox personality. They're not trusting. So Kawhi uses, his Dennis, Uncle Dennis, right? Which is, and then, Lamar used his mom. Well, again, it's not the end of the world, but I think it comes down to both are not trusting. Lamar was overlooked by a lot of people. He watched himself in high school and college be dominant, and yet he falls. He doesn't trust people. Kawhi Leonard was overlooked by a lot of schools, even though, he was dominating guys in an early age. And so, they come into the sport. They're kind of unique personalities. They're non-trusting. They take an unorthodox agent stance or route. I've said this before about Kawhi. I'd love to have him on my team, San Antonio, Toronto, when the culture's built. You can't build around him. He walks into the facility, I've been told, 3:45, I'm not playing tonight.
Whoa, you can't operate like that, yeah.
So he can't be your one. And listen, I'm rooting for Lamar to sign because he makes the league better. He's a fascinating player, and I think he's a really good guy. But, man, management has an advantage if you don't have equally strong management surrounding you. Now is the time. You want tickets? Check out the Game Time app. It's the fastest growing ticket app. They got you covered. March Madness tickets, NBA tickets, playoff tickets, NHL tickets, Game Time. They also do comedy shows. They also do concerts. Anything you want to attend, check out the Game Time app. And right now, $20 off your first purchase. How? Download the Game Time app and use the redeem code Colin. Me, COLIN, $20 off your first tickets. Comedy, concerts, we got March Madness. You got to be at those games. NHL, NBA, final stretch run. The Game Time app, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
You think there's been a lot of talk, Frank's history with bigger quarterbacks in Carolina. They make the trade, obviously, last week. Tepper's,
yeah.
I mean, it's his team, but he's going to all these pro days. He's right by, I heard you say, just kind of a way to make sure we bring a huge contingency here, see how he handles himself. Clearly, CJ's a pretty high-level guy. You do the same with Bryce. Do you think they already know who they're going to take? Because that's what it feels like. They're going to take CJ Stroud. But, I've been in these meetings. There's still a lot of debate going on, especially when the other guy in Bryce is a really high character guy at the highest level also and has had so much success. So I could see the conversations, running right up for the next 3 or 4 weeks up until the draft.
Well, I talked to an NFL GM this week who told me Will Levis has the fewest. There's 3 or 4 key traits that you have to have, and that Will Levis had the weakest of the 4 because he was reckless, accuracy issues. This GM said of the top 4 quarterbacks, he has the fewest traits that you really want. So take Will Levis out. So it comes down to the final 3. I think the size, fair or not, is something as a number 1 pick. I mean, Kyler was a little small. He didn't want to get hit anymore. Baker was a little small. Manziel was a little small. Tua was a little small. We got a history here. You take a small guy up top, the hits land differently. So I think there are concerns about Bryce Young. I think they wanted to see C.J. Stroud. They wanted to meet him and look him in the eye. And they think that C.J. Stroud has some of Bryce Young's accuracy and experience, and they kind of just wanted to see what's he like as a kid. Because I think they look at C.J. Stroud and say, well, big school with NFL receivers, really good coach, you get hard coached, very accurate, very composed, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. CJ didn't have a lot of big interception games. I think he had 1 or 2 bad games in bad weather in the Big Ten. So my guess would be they wanted to go see CJ and say, hey, does he have enough of the Bryce Young kind of cool confidence, composure? And if he does, we get 3.5 more inches and 20 more pounds. Because if you look at their college stats, there are some similarities in accuracy of delivering the football. And remember, Frank Reich's history, he's a polisher. He takes guys that can be a little wild, Anthony Richardson, and polishes them up. But I don't think Anthony Richardson, he doesn't feel like a 1 year. I mean, he could be a 2-year build, and I don't think Frank wants to wait 2 years to have a guy ready to play at a high level.
Yeah, I think the outlier in Josh Allen has really kind of skewed everything. Most of these guys tend to be, in the history of the game, more Malik Willis than Josh Allen. I went to a spring training game yesterday, and it was the Dodgers against the Royals. And it's Dustin May, the Dodgers, the big redhead kid. who throws 98, 6'5".
Yes.
And then, well, he's on probably the 18th hole of his career. This guy's made $350 million. It was Zach Greinke, who's a small player. And it kind of hit me like everyone's banking on May to have this long career, make all this money, but it's just potential, size. He got rocked in the game. And then you see Greinke, who when I Googled $350 million in his career, was incredible for a large percentage of it. And small guys, if they are special, can dominate. Now, their floor, like, if Bryce Young's going to hit, he's going to be really good. But it's much harder for him just to be, and this is where I think people talk themselves out of it. If it doesn't go perfect, how does he just be like Jared Goff, or Alex Smith? Because there aren't just, usually the small guy isn't just solid. Look at Kyler. He was either going to be really good or he's going to stink. There's not just like slow and steady. So that's where I think the debate on Bryce is legitimate. But if you do believe he's going to be special, and there's only a small percentage of those guys, just because you were special in college does not translate to the pros. We have a long history of guys who are great in college that can't play in the NFL. I tend to think he's going to be an incredible player just because I heard Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah talking about this, that we talk a lot about small guys getting injured. Most quarterbacks in recent memory that get hit, get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, Trey Lance is big. Jimmy Garoppolo's bigger. That you get hit, you get hurt with the size of these defensive linemen and linebackers coming into the game. So it's more about just protecting your quarterback. Herbert broke some ribs last year. So,
well, Stafford's falling apart. Matt Stafford's falling apart.
He's 34 years old. So Russell's breaking down. He's had knee surgery. Russell Wilson's 33, 34 years old. So, I would take Bryce Young, but I do understand the argument on the other side of the ledger on the small thing, though. If you hit with a small, this guy can be. And from the character stuff, Kyler was questioned coming out by the people internally.
No question.
Bryce's character, just like CJ's, is really, I think these guys are very, very well liked from a character, teammate, football intelligence standpoint.
Well, and also Bryce was a rock star at high school at 15 in L.A., and then he goes to Alabama, and he's a rock star right out of the chute. So, he's been on the spotlight forever. So I feel like C.J. Stroud's personality is a little more, at least I've heard has great leadership qualities, but I feel like Bryce Young as a number one pick would be unaffected completely.
Yeah.
He was the best high school. I mean, I can remember talking to somebody when he was a sophomore on the USC staff, and they're like, oh, yeah. Ball comes out different. Then he goes to, his just sort of spatial awareness, pocket awareness. It's way beyond. I talked to Frank Reich. I can't give away too much what we talked about, but he asked me about some quarterback stuff, and I said, listen, I saw a lot of Bryce in high school, a lot of tape, and I'm like, Coach, he just sees the field different. Like his head is just all over the field. Whereas C.J. Stroud, Lance Zierlein, his dad works in the NFL. Lance does a good job for NFL.com. He said C.J. Stroud is Jared Goff. And by the way, that's not terrible.
No, not at all.
He'll win a lot of games
he's more athletic than Jared too. But for sure. Belichick's coaching tree has been an utter disaster, and Josh remade his image and had been turning people down. He was going to get a head coaching job. Takes the Raider job. Within a year, Derek's out of there. Trades Darren Waller when he gets coming back from a wedding that felt a little clunky. I don't know if you saw that story.
Yes.
So it's just now Darren. If you Google his stats, the last couple of years he hasn't exactly been George Kittle or Travis Kelce, but still it was a little clunky the way that thing went down. Now Jimmy's an impressive guy. Had a lot of success when his team has been well run. Patriots, 49ers.
Right.
Comes to the Raiders. Dysfunction is part of their brand. Now he's got Waller's no longer there. Their offensive line got some question marks. I think there is just tangible pressure on Josh now of you're going all in with Jimmy. And even if they draft a quarterback, it's going to end up being a Will Levis or a Malik, that's going to take some time, or not Malik, but Anthony Richardson. Not like they're going to be ready to play. I don't see how the Raiders now Sean Payton's with the Broncos. They're going to be much more competitive. We know the Chargers are good with the Chiefs are the champs. I don't know, man. I get why Jimmy, you got to take $35 million guaranteed, but I don't know if I see that one going well.
It's very possible Josh McDaniels is just one of the great offensive coordinators. I mean, if Sark doesn't get it turned around at Texas, he's a remarkable offensive coordinator. He may not be a head coach. Every time I watch Sark's teams, I'm always left with he recruits well, the offenses are clever, excellent game planner. They're never quite buttoned up. They make the details are always a little. And I'm not saying this is true, but is it possible Josh McDaniels is just an all-time great coordinator?
And there's nothing wrong with that. It pays $3-4 million in the NFL. You know.
Yeah. So I think their offensive talent's really good, but I think how when Brady left the Bucs, I think the divorce has been more lopsided than we thought. Brady's success in Tampa juxtaposed against Bill's struggles in New England. So Josh McDaniels leaves New England. The offense falls apart.
Yeah.
You're like, wow. This one feels like Josh and Belichick were perfect together, and maybe they're just not great apart. It's very possible that Bill, I've seen this my whole life, like some coaches really need a strong coordinator on one side of the ball. They just do. I mean, Saban has hit a lot of home runs at OC. A lot. Nick knows what he doesn't know. And it's just possible that Josh and Bill, they're just perfect. Just perfect. And, for the record, let's admit this. Josh and Bill got Mac Jones to the playoffs. Didn't they?
They were pretty good 2 years ago. I mean, they went 10-7, and they probably could have easily had 11 wins. I mean, they were really competitive that year.
Yeah, it's very, and this is not a knock on Josh, but it's like, we talk about the Brady leaving Bill. If Josh doesn't leave, I think New England is kind of in that Super Bowl 18 bubble, because I think Mac is kind of capable with Bill's brilliance. And I think Josh McDaniels does a really good job elevating an offense. But I'm like you. Some of his decisions, he's a little cold, which works in New England. But I remember when he was in Denver, and everybody's like, dude, Tebow's not a first-round quarterback. I mean, I can remember talking to people inside the Broncos who were like, dude, he's our fourth best quarterback in camp. He's not even second or third. He's fourth. But, Josh is very strong-headed. So I'm not sure he's a head coach. We'll see. I'm not sure he is.